Good morning, everybody. Happy rainy Wednesday. I'm Honora Spillane with Center State CEO. I am the Director of Economic Development here, and welcome to our Round 12 CFA Funding Forum. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and especially thank Dan Kolinski with Empire State Development here in Central New York, the Deputy Regional Director, I believe is Dan's title. He's very fancy. But today we wanted to give everybody an overview of the funding opportunities coming from the state this year. With that, I will turn it over to Dan and we'll kick it off.
Thanks, Nora, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Nora said, I am Dan Kolinski and I am the Deputy Director at Empire State Development. I know a lot of you. I kind of looked through the RSVP list and I've worked with many of you in the past, but for those of you who don't know us, Empire State Development is the Chief Economic Development arm of New York State. The state's broken up into 10 economic development regions, and I'll go into that a little bit later to show you how we're broken down. But I represent the Central New York region, which is Onondaga County and the 4 contiguous counties, Cortland, Cayuga, Oswego, and Madison County. And just to kind of go into a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. So we'll try to keep this pretty quick. It'll be about a 45-minute presentation, and as Nora said, I'll stop at certain intervals to take questions from you all. There's going to be a lot of information. I will make the slides available to all of you after we're done, so don't worry if you're having trouble keeping up with some of the notes or anything like that. I will make sure that the slides can be made available to all of you afterwards. Lisa will send those out. But basically, we're going to quickly go over economic development and what the regional councils are and how the CFA process works for regional council funding. I'll go into the consolidated funding application, some tips and stuff on how to navigate through that application. It's a bit of a lengthy application, but there's a lot of useful tools out there to help you navigate that. Then specifically, I'll talk about Empire State Development, some of the programs and resources we have available to help you. And then I'll talk about a few of the additional funding sources that are available throughout other agencies or throughout the state. So jumping right in, economic development and the regional council. As I mentioned, so before 2011, basically how economic development used to work is it was kind of a top-down approach. Individuals in Albany or elected officials would make decisions on what were the best ways to invest in the regions across the state. As we know, the needs of New York City are really not the same as the needs of Central New York, and for that matter, the needs of Central New York aren't the same as the Southern Tier or the North Country or Western New York. We might have some similarities, but really what this was meant to do was take decision-making out of the hands of people who really don't live and interact on a daily basis with our region and put it into the hands of stakeholders who live here, work here, and have a vested interest here. So we created the regional councils, and what these are individuals. We have a 25-person council. They're made up of individuals from economic development, from not-for-profits, from the business sector, business owners, education, academia, et cetera. And what they do is they come together regularly, every couple of months to discuss what are the best ways to invest resources in our region to ensure that they're being best spent. Since 2011, through this process, we've invested $7.5 billion across the state, which has supported over 9,200 projects. We've also supported or invested $600 million in 60 downtowns through the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, of which Syracuse won this past one, along with the city of Oneida. And I think if you live in a city like Oswego, you can really see the benefits of what a DRI does and how much it's transformed that city over the last 5 years. So we're really excited about this program coming back this year, along with an additional program for some of our smaller, more rural communities that they can apply for as well. So who makes up our regional council? Our co-chairs currently are Dr. Linda Lemira, who is the president of Lemoyne College, and Randy Wilkin, who is the president of MACD, the Manufacturers Association of Central New York. And as you can see, the additional board members come from all different walks of life, whether it be private sector, public sector, boards, business owners, what have you. And we really are lucky. We have a very engaged council, individuals who care deeply about this community and are constantly putting forward many extra hours on top of their day jobs to make sure that the jobs that we're doing are successful and the way that we're investing our resources go a long way. So this shows you quickly just a breakdown of how the state's economic development regions are broken out. As you can see, Central New York right there in the center. And if you're noticing, if you're doing some quick math, Central New York has been awarded $843.6 million for 888 projects. And as I proudly like to point out to everybody, we lead all regions in awarded funding. And a lot of it has to do with individuals like yourselves joining these types of meetings. I mean, really being proactive, reaching out to our office about potential projects that you might have, makes a huge difference in allowing us to put forward good projects to our committees, to our review committees, and to the council that we can then put forward for funding. So by being here, by being active, by asking questions, we're able to really help secure funding for some great projects across the region. So I thank you for joining today and for helping to continue to make us really successful in securing funding for our region. So jumping right into the consolidated funding application, as many of you are aware, you've probably applied through the CFA before. But for those of you who aren't familiar, what used to happen before the CFA existed, the consolidated funding application, is if you wanted to apply for funding through Empire State Development, you would call my office. I would send you an application. It would ask you for the name of your business, your name, your contact information, what is the name of your project, a description of your project, where are you located. But if you also, let's say, wanted to apply for money through the DEC because you were on a brownfield, you'd call someone in the DEC and they would send you an application, 75% of which was the exact same information you would probably just supplied to me. And as we know, as many of you are business owners or busy individuals, we don't have time for repetition in terms of applying for state funding. We need to make it as easy as possible for you to access these funds so that you can get on to the day-to-day workings of running your business. So the CFA was created. It's a streamlined approach to requesting funding through state agencies. It's one single portal, one single application that will allow you to access various programs across state agencies, 20 different programs, 10 different state agencies. And again, while it seems like it could be at times, it's a long application, this really is meant to be as easy as possible to make sure that you can access as many programs that might be right for you and your project. So how do you get to the CFA? If you go to regionalcouncils.ny.gov, that website's going to be one of your best friends over the next 6 weeks or so if you're looking to apply for funding. Right at the top, there's going to be a gold banner, and it'll say apply now. And if you click on that little link to apply now, it will take you directly to the CFA application. That's the easiest way to get there. You'll find it in a bunch of other places as well, but that's the quick and easiest way to get there. Something else you'll want to note from the Regional Council website right when you get there, if you scroll down a little bit past that launch, the round 12 screen that you see on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, if you scroll down a little bit, will be some key documents. Inside of this are some things that are going to be one of your best friends, and I will say it's the available CFA resources. So this is a very long, very big document, about 300 pages or so, but it has information on every available resource and program within the CFA. So if you are, let's say, interested in the ESD Grant Program, but you're not quite sure of the requirements that go along with it, you can search the ESD Grant Program within that document, and there will be 2 or 3 pages specific to that program on eligibility, what you need to apply, if there's a deadline, if there's not a deadline. So that really will be a good place to start searching if you're interested in figuring out what exactly am I eligible for and how does the program work. To the right, you'll also see the 2022 CFA Application Manual. This is a step-by-step guide of how to apply through the CFA. So if you have questions as you're going through the CFA and trying to figure out, I don't know how to answer this question, or what do they mean by this, I would recommend first checking out the CFA Application Manual, because that might answer and probably will answer the majority of the questions you'll have. And at the end of that is an FAQ. We kind of gathered what were some of the most frequently asked questions, obviously since FAQ, and we put in answers to those. So please check that out, because it'll be a good way for you to answer a lot of the questions you might have. And then lastly, if you look in that blue bar, there's the 2022 CFA program webinars. Many of our agency friends who aren't hosting workshops like I'm doing today have created webinars that you can access online that go over all their state programming. So please check out those webinars. Again, if there's a specific program that you want to get more information on, there's probably a webinar that exists that you can get information on that. And then we can follow up if you have further questions with that agency to get you the answers to the questions you don't have already. So when you click on Apply Now, you're going to get to this page. This is the Consolidated Funding Applications homepage. If you have already created an application, you can go right into the login button and you can log right in and access the application that you've already started. However, if you are new and if you have not created a specific token for your specific project, and this is key, just because you've applied in the past, you're still going to need to register your specific project. Even if you've been awarded in the past or if you've applied in the past, because in order to access your application in the future, each application is given a unique token. It's a code, it's a bunch of numbers. That token is what's going to allow you to access it and find it quickly. So when you register, you need to register each project that you're going to be working on through the registration button. So when you get to the registration page, it's going to bring you to that left-hand page. It's going to ask you for just some basic information, your email address. You're going to put in again your organization name, your phone number, and then you'll have to confirm that you are not a robot. I assume that no one on this is a robot, but Russia, if you are listening, we do not have money for you. The next thing that you'll do is once you actually get your token and once you actually start your application, it's going to bring you to two options, Program Wizard or Program List. And what's nice about these options is if you know what program you want, if you know for sure that you are going to apply for the ESD Grant Program, you can go right to the program list, click on the ESD Grant Program, and you'll be good to go. But if you're not sure what programs might be right for you, you can go through the Program Wizard. And what this is an algorithm that's going to ask you a few questions. And based on the responses to those questions is going to suggest funding sources that might be right for your project. So again, it's going to take you a little bit longer. You're going to have to fill in a little more information, but it's a good way to figure out if you're not familiar with the programs, which ones might be right for you. But again, if you know exactly what you're going to apply for, go right to the program list, scroll down, click on the one that you're interested in. That'll bring you to the next program down there. Once you click on those programs, it'll say your application programs. These are all the ones that you've now clicked on and want to apply for. And that means you're going to, when you continue the application, get specific questions related to that program. You'll also notice in the kind of the green bar, it says open enrollment. That'll tell you if your program that you're applying for is subject to a deadline or if it's open enrollment. And again, I'll get into some of those deadlines a little bit later in a couple more slides. Or maybe the next slide. CFA Timeline. So the CFA is now open. The application is open and live. You can apply now. It opened on May 2nd. For those programs that are going to be subject to the deadline, you'll see in the list in the resource guide which ones are deadline programs and which ones are open enrollment programs. That deadline is July 29th at 4 p.m. sharp. There are no exceptions for those programs. And I ask people, have reached out to me all the time and says, oh my God, it's 6 o'clock and our computer shut down, or they froze, or we couldn't submit. And I wish that I could help them, but the system quite literally shuts down. I can't even access the CFA system after 4 o'clock on that Friday. So there really is no way to submit an application for a deadline program after the 4 o'clock deadline. So please, if you're applying for one of those programs, shoot to get your application in mid-July. Please do not wait until the end of July. I know that we're all busy, and I know that, if people are like me, I like to procrastinate. I do some of my best work after procrastinating, but in this instance, please do not do that. Try to get it in, a week in advance. Don't wait to the last minute because inevitably something might go wrong, and I would hate for you to miss out on an opportunity just because you didn't get it in on time. For the remainder of the programs that aren't subject to that deadline, those will remain open and will be reviewed on a regular basis, probably quarterly, but maybe more if need so. And for those of you who are familiar with the ESD grant, I'm just going to go to the next slide because we can talk about this further. So inside of the available CFA resources, that document that I talked about earlier, that'll be your best friend. This is page 4. This shows you exactly which programs are subject to that deadline and which ones are open enrollment. So please make sure you're checking out and you're aware of which ones you're applying for and which ones are subject to that open enrollment and which ones are not. And real quick, I'll just go back to this because I'd like to point out, and for those of you who heard my presentation last year, you know that we made a change to the ESD grant program. What used to happen with the grant program is that it was subject to that 4 o'clock deadline. And if you did not get your application in by 4 o'clock, there was not another opportunity to apply through the regional council process for ESD grant funds. We all know that businesses don't work in those types of square boxes where you say you got to get an application in by July and you can't start your project until December. That doesn't really work for the timeline for businesses. Businesses are always shifting. They're trying to make decisions quickly. So as a result of listening to you and constantly sending this advice up the ladder, we changed last year how we review the ESD grants. Instead of it being subject to the deadline, it's now going to be reviewed on a rolling basis. Applications are reviewed quarterly now. We're anticipating that we will do the first review starting after the July 29th deadline. So if you'd like to be considered for the first batch of ESD grants, you submit your application before July 29th. That'll allow us to start reviewing your application in August, and you'll most likely find out if you've been awarded at the end of September, maybe early October. What that means is, and why that's important, is based on the timeline of your project, if you want to get started with a project this fall, while we still have a portion of the construction season, you should get your application in before that July 29th deadline. However, if you're not starting your project till maybe the spring of next year, you could wait till one of our additional reviews, either at the end of October or the end of December, and then wait to find out until later in the year if you were awarded, versus getting it in right away. Now, I'm going to anticipate one of the questions that someone's going to probably ask is, if I don't get my application in July 29th, does it risk there not being funding available in the later rounds for me to be able to apply later? The short answer is no. We did this last year. We were able to do 5 batches or 5 reviews of applications. That's how much the money was spread out and how evenly people were applying. So I am not anticipating that we're going to have, $20 million worth of awards coming in through the first batch. So please do not worry that if you don't get it in the first round, somehow you're going to miss out. That's not going to happen. So just trying to anticipate that question a little bit later. So Empire State Development, as I mentioned, we are the chief economic development arm of New York State. And our regional office, we really pride ourselves on trying to be an asset and be, service oriented. So even, if you don't think Empire State Development is the right place for you, feel free to reach out to our office. The folks at Center State and our partners at MACME and the other IDAs across the state, we work really closely with each other to make sure that we are helping you get whatever resources you need to be successful. You are extremely busy folks who are, not on top of probably running a business or doing your day job, but probably dealing with families and soccer practice and music recitals and what be it. We want to make sure that your life is as easy as possible in accessing what is available to help you be successful. So please reach out to our office with any questions you might have. If I don't know the answer, Nora probably knows the answer, but if Nora doesn't know the answer, as a combined effort, we will be able to find you the person who does know the answer. So please reach out and take advantage of us because we want to be able to help you as much as possible. So jumping into Empire State Development, I'm going to talk about 4 main programs that are out there to help businesses through our agencies. So the first is the ESD Grant Program. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. I'll go in pretty quickly about some of the eligibility requirements and what allows you to apply and what the eligible funds can be used for. Real quick, I'll mention our Women and Minority-Owned Business Division and some of the things that they have available to either help you find certified MWBEs across the state, or if you are a certified MWBE, how you can find or you can apply for contracting opportunities through our state website. I'll then jump into the Excelsior Jobs Program. This is a tax credit program that we have for job creation throughout the state. And then briefly, I'll touch on Global New York. It's one of those divisions within ESD that many people aren't familiar with, but they have a ton of great resources if you're looking to start exporting internationally. So if you're a manufacturer and you think that your product would be great in Germany and you want to get into the German market, we have resources to help you do that. So I'll touch on those really quickly. And again, if there's follow-ups afterwards, we can go into more detail at a later date. So the ESD Grant Program, jumping right in, eligible project costs. So these are for capital improvement type projects. So acquisition of land, buildings, machinery and equipment, demolition and environmental remediation, new construction, renovation or leasehold improvements, acquisition of furniture and fixtures, certain soft costs. So if you have, let's say, architectural design work that needs to be done, or if you need to do a land survey, something of that nature, some of those costs can be included. And then planning and feasibility studies related to specific capital site or capital use. We do have a program that is, for feasibility studies. That is a 50-50 match program. That's separate application within the CFA, but you can apply for feasibility studies as well within our program. Ineligible costs, unfortunately, we can't fund retail and or residential projects. The one caveat being that we will do some mixed use projects. Let's say that there's a dilapidated building in, I don't know, let's say Phoenix, New York, and you wanted to rebuild it, but you wanted to put apartments in the top 3 floors and commercial in the bottom 2 floors. We could fund the portion that is the commercial aspect of that project. We do look at that on a case-by-case basis, and it does depend on where you are. Typically, it's got to be a pretty distressed or underinvested area for us to be considering mixed-use projects as an eligible project. But we do fund those, so feel free to reach out further if you have a project that you're considering. Some important information about the ESD Grant Program, and these are those little details that sometimes trip people up on whether or not they're eligible or not. Awards typically won't exceed 20% of total project costs, and actually they're probably going to be closer to 10 or 15%. Your project, the more private investment you can put into your project, the more competitive that your project becomes. So if you're able to, if the budget gap, if you've got all your financing lined up, but you say, man, we just have a 10% gap to make this project viable, then please apply for 10%. But if you truly do need 20%, if 20% is the number that makes your project viable, you can apply for up to 20%. Again, though, typically our awards fall closer to the 10 or 15% range of the total project cost. All of our awards require a 10% equity contribution. So basically what this means is you can't service the entire project via debt. If it's $1 million project, you as the owner of the company or the board or whoever it might be, or if the company itself going to reinvest, have to put in that $100,000 of that $1 million total project budget. So just something that I remind people of, it's typically not an issue. And what this allows us to do is just ensure that you have a stake in the game, that the project is probably going to move forward if you are putting forward 10% of your own finances into the project to make sure that it moves forward. When you submit the CFA, they're going to ask you for a budget for your project, and that's going to include some of the things I mentioned before. Is there acquisition of land? Is there renovation or new construction? Are there machinery and equipment purchases? You're going to break those down for us in a budget. That budget should only include costs that are specific to this project or phase. And what that means is maybe you're planning this is phase one of a phase two, but phase two is in for 3 or 4 more years. Don't include the budget for phase two, only include phase one, because our grants are all reimbursable. And so in order to see the grant, you're gonna have to do and spend the money that you said that you're going to spend in your application. I believe that that's one of our next, so project cannot begin, again, so when you're filling out that budget, any expenses that were incurred prior to award are not eligible. You cannot include those. So if you purchased the building already and are now looking to renovate it, you can't include the purchase cost of that building in your application. You can only include any cost that would be incurred after you've been awarded. And that award date is you'll know because you'll get a letter from us that says your award date is this date. Once you're awarded, then you can begin incurring costs towards your project. As I mentioned, the funds are dispersed in arrears as a reimbursement, and that means if you say that you're going to hire 5 people and spend $1 million, you need to hire those 5 people and spend $1 million before you will see the award. Now, if for cash flow reasons you want to see a disbursement based on certain milestones, we can sometimes work with you to make that happen. But it is a long process for reimbursement. And just to give you, I'll jump into the weeds a little bit because I don't want people to be shocked when, it's usually a 6 to 9 month period, maybe sometimes longer if there's certain things that aren't in order. But, once you finish the project, you come back to us and say, okay, I'm ready for my reimbursement and to receive my grant. We will collect all the documents that show that, you invoiced for what you were, your contracting work. You had, money that went out that paid for that contracting work. You met your MWBE goals. You have a certificate of occupation. All those things, we're going to need to see proof of all those things. We're going to do an internal audit on that. At the same time, we're going to take this project to a public hearing, which will take place in the municipality that you're located in. We will take care of setting all that up, so you don't need to worry about doing any of those details. We do all that work on our end. And these are we have to do this because it's required by law to hold a public hearing. We then need to go to our board of directors. It then has to go through another audit process through the comptroller's office. So as you can see, each of these steps add up, 2 weeks here, 4 weeks here. And by the time the money actually is dispersed to you, it's about 6 to 9 months. So just think about that in terms of your cash flow, and as you're planning for that money to come back to you, that it will be a little bit of time before you see it. As I mentioned, a public hearing is required for any acquisition, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or alteration of any property. Again, we take care of all those details in our office. You don't even need to attend as the owner of the project. It's just that if something were to change between when we were to award you and when the project was completed, anything in a negative light, there's an opportunity for the public to make that information or their feelings toward the project known. But again, these are pretty standard, and typically people don't show up to them. There's a $250 application fee that needs to be sent in once you return your incentive proposal. So after you were awarded, we'll send you an incentive proposal that you'll sign. And then once you return that to us, it's a $250 fee. There's also a 1% commitment fee, which will be based on the grant amount. So if you're awarded a $100,000 grant, it's $1,000. And this will be assessed after the project is completed and you come to us for your disbursement. And most projects, especially those that have construction or reconstruction, will be assigned MWBE goals, Women and Minority Business Enterprise goals, based on the total grant that you receive. These are typically in the 30% range. Sometimes if it's an extremely specialized project, like if you're buying a specialized piece of equipment, we can waive those, but almost always you're assigned an MWBE goal. And what that basically means is, if you're doing a new construction project and you have to, you have a $100,000 award, you might be assigned a 30% MWBE goal, which means $30,000. The $100,000 would need to be spent using a certified MWBE enterprise in New York State. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how do I do that? I don't know any certified MWBEs. I don't know anyone in my life. Who can I reach out to? Well, our Division of Minority and Women Business Development has a website called the New York State Contract Reporter. Continuing on, again, you're going to be assigned those goals, but in order to help you, we have what's called the New York State Contract Reporter. And that website's right there on the right, www.nyscr.ny.gov. And there are two things that I want to point out to you here that might be useful. So one, if you are a current certified MWBE and you are looking to find work in New York State, you can go to that green button, I want to find contracts to bid on, and anyone who has advertised their opportunities for their projects on here, you will have an opportunity to bid on those. So if you're looking for more work as a certified MWBE, I would go to that green button and see what's out there and available already for you to bid on. Now, if you are a business that's looking to meet those goals and you aren't sure, where to start, you can go to that blue button, I want to advertise opportunities, and you can actually advertise your project on this website, and all of the certified MWBEs across the state will have access to that and will be able to bid on that. Another thing that will be helpful is the New York State contract system. So ny.newnycontracts.com. We have a directory of all of the certified firms across the state. You can search by zip code, you can search by type of industry that they're in, and you'll be able to find, and you can search by, mileage. So I want to look within a 50-mile radius of the city of Auburn. And you'll be able to search for that, and all the certified firms that are within a 50-mile radius will come up. So this will also be a good friend or a good tool for you to use if you're looking to meet those goals. But again, we will work with you as a regional office to make sure that you're looking into that early on and not getting to the end and thinking, oh my God, how am I going to meet those goals? We'll make sure that we can help you meet those goals. If you need specific assistance regarding our MWBE division, you can either email mwbebusinessdev@esd.ny.gov or reach out to Ryan Smith, who's who works as the developer of business developer in our office here in Syracuse. That's his email and his phone number, or you can go to their website as well. Okay, moving along, the Excelsior Jobs Program. This is our second most popular program. What this is a refundable tax credit that's available for economic development initiatives and projects that create or retain jobs, prevent, reduce, or eliminate underemployment, or increase business activity in the community or region. As you'll see in red there, most of, on the next slide, it will say up to up to 6.84 or 6.85% for new job creation. It's a discretionary program, so just because you're eligible for the maximum does not necessarily mean you'll be awarded the maximum. Each project will be awarded based on our internal cost benefit analysis that we will run to see what an appropriate award for your project is. So in order to be eligible for the Excelsior Jobs Program, you need to fall under one of these targeted activities or industries. So those are manufacturing, agriculture, software development, scientific R&D, distribution centers, back office operations, life sciences companies, entertainment company, music production, and financial services. So just off the get-go, you have to be one of these industries in order to be eligible for this program. If you are one of these targeted industries, you will be eligible for up to 4 tax credits that fall within the program. Again, the most popular tax credit that people can apply for is the Excelsior Jobs Tax Credit. This is a credit of up to 6.85% of wages per new job to cover a portion of the associated payroll costs that come with those new jobs. So if you're, creating each of these industries will have a minimum job creation that I'll show you on a chart on the next slide. So for example, if you are a manufacturer, the minimum job is 5. So you need to be creating a minimum number of those jobs in order to qualify for the program. We also have the Excelsior Research and Development Tax Credit. This is a credit if you are currently in the Federal Research and Development Program, so you have to already be in the federal program. It's a credit of 50% of what you're earning from that program, up to a total of 3% of the research expenditures made in New York State. We also have the Excelsior Investment Tax Credit. So these are for eligible investments that you're making. So certain machinery and equipment would be eligible. This is valued at 2% of those qualified investments. And then the Excelsior Real Property Tax Credit. In order to qualify for this, you need to be considered a regionally significant project. And basically what that is going to mean is there's a higher threshold in terms of jobs and a certain investment amount that needs to be made. I'll show you that on the next screen. The majority of people who apply for our program are applying for either the jobs tax credit or the investment tax credit. Those are our two most popular programs within the Excelsior Jobs program. So talking about the tracks and what makes you eligible. So on the right there, you'll see the minimum job, or on the left, I'm sorry, you'll see the minimum jobs that are required. So scientific R&D, software development, agriculture, manufacturing, music production, life sciences. A minimum of 5 new jobs need to be created. If you're back office operations, 25, distribution 50, and entertainment 100. And then to qualify for that regionally significant project, the minimums, as you can see, are much higher. So for manufacturing, it's 10 jobs and $1 million investment. For scientific R&D, it's 20 jobs and a $3 million investment. That's why there's a much higher threshold to qualify for that program. And just like with our grant program, the effective date, this basically means that you cannot create a job, or any job created before you've been awarded is not eligible for this program. So if you say you're going to create 5 jobs, but you created a job a month before you were technically awarded through New York State, that one job that you created early is not eligible. You'll still need to create 5 more jobs after the effective date or after the award date. So Global New York, this is a division within ESD that I mentioned. Not many people are familiar with it, but they have a lot of great resources that can help you if you are looking to export to what qualifies as a life sciences organization. So life sciences organization would be something that's doing, say, if they're making, for example, there's a Quadrant. It was a company that helped create the test strips for COVID testing. So that would be considered life sciences. If you're doing something with biodefense, if you're doing something with, anything that's kind of like organic working materials. I'm trying to think of a few more examples off the top of my head. I'm struggling right off the top of my head. Those would be those types of industries. So Global New York, as I was mentioning, this is a division that helps people who are currently in New York State export their product internationally. And so within them, their mission is to promote competitiveness and foster economic activity by assisting New York small businesses to export their products and services globally. And they also attract international businesses to come to New York State. Less relevant to what you guys are doing here. The first one would definitely be more relevant to you. So how do we do that? They have 3 programs that help them do this. They have the Exporting Marketing Assistance Service Program, EMAP. They have the State Trade Expansion Program, or STEP. So the first one, EMAP, is for New York State companies that are new to exporting and interested in expanding to new markets. The STEP program are for New York State businesses headquartered here that are more experienced, already exporting and engaging in exporting activities. And the Global New York Grant Fund program, these are for New York State companies that are already exporting, engaging in exporting activities, and New York State not-for-profit organizations providing export assistance and trade education to New York State companies. So a little more information about these. So the Exporting Marketing Assistance Service Program, EMAP. So this is a no-cost service for eligible companies. Companies can choose up to 2 markets per a 12-month period, and each company benefits from a personalized program. So you're going to be given a program manager to work with you and help you create, marketing materials that you can send out to international, other countries to help export your products in their countries. So the Global New York Foreign Office provides the company with a report on the local market intelligence and a list of sales agents and distributors that are relevant in that area. Eligible companies for this program are New York State companies, at least 1 year in business, 500 employees or less, with 51% of the product value added in New York State. The State Trade Expansion Program, or the STEP program, this is a grant funded through the U.S. Small Business Administration. So through STEP, New York State companies can apply for up to $14,000 in grants per program year to help them export. The grant is awarded in form of a reimbursement and is based on 70% of the total eligible cost. Eligible companies for this program are businesses that operate in New York State to manufacture, assemble, and/or distribute a product or provide an exportable service that contains at least 51% U.S. content. The business has to have been around for at least 1 year and qualify as a, quote, eligible small business concern and meet the SBA size standards. Eligible use of the funds in this program: financial assistance awards for travel, subscription to services offered by the U.S. Department of Commerce, export training workshops, international or qualified domestic trade show exhibits, website content and foreign language translation, consultancy services, and compliance testing. Okay, so just jumping into a couple of the new funding programs available this year. Many of these may not be, what you applicable to what you're trying to do, but we'll jump in real quick. So there's 5 that I'm going to talk about today: the Small Business Rescue Plan, Restore New York, DRI Round 6, and the New York Forward Communities, the Connect All Initiative, and the Workforce Development Initiative. And these are going to be very high level. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. If you'd like more information about any specific program afterwards, please reach out to me and we can talk about it further. So the $1 billion Small Business Rescue Plan, this was based loosely off what the federal government did, the American Rescue Plan that was done last year now. So this was $1 billion into multiple different programs. So one of the programs, $200 million Small Business Seed Funding Program. So this is a companion to the $800 million Small Business Recovery Program that was available during COVID last year. So this is for new small businesses. So this is intended to support newer businesses that opened on or after September 1st, 2018, and were impacted by the global pandemic. These are flexible grants of up to $25,000. The priority will be given to socially and economically disadvantaged owners. It's industry neutral, so it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can apply for it, with the emphasis being on micro businesses and smaller businesses and the arts sector. And what's new this year and what makes this more broadly applicable to individuals is applicants must show either revenues of $5,000 or $1 million or $5,000 in expenses. Before, if you didn't show revenue, you weren't eligible, and many of our new businesses that maybe opened at the end of 2019 or at the beginning of 2020 couldn't show any revenues because as soon as they opened, they were immediately forced to close. So this will show that if you have at least $5,000 in expenses, you will still be eligible for this program as well. And again, these are flexible grants used towards anything that, flexible spending set for neutral industries and small businesses. The $250 million COVID capital cost small business tax credit. So this is a 50% credit up to $25,000 with a minimum spend of $2,000. This is to cover all COVID-related purchases that small businesses had to take on, including signage, PPE, equipment for contactless sales, etc. It's using what we're calling the variant window. So these are purchases that are made in 2021 and 2022. As we know, as we're slowly coming out of the pandemic, it's still not over yet. So we are, making this available to individuals who are still, spending money to help make their businesses COVID friendly. So you can apply for 50% credit up to $25,000 with a minimum of $2,000 spend. Excuse me. And the $35 million restaurant return to work tax credit. So this is enhancing the existing COVID recovery tax credit. It raises the jobs cap from 10 to 20. It's providing a little bit of individual relief for high job creating restaurants. And what you can earn is it's $5,000 per job credit at COVID impacted restaurants in certain areas. So again, last year it was up to 10 jobs. Now it's up to 20 jobs that you can earn in a benefit in a return to work tax credit. $25 million in Restore New York. And so many of you might have heard of this program before, but are like, boy, I've heard a lot of great things, but I don't know what it is. This has been dormant for 5 years. We are super excited to have it back. It is a great program that can really do a lot of good around our communities. And basically what it is it's funding to demolish, rehab, vacant and abandoned properties. Specifically in this round, we're going to be targeting disadvantaged communities and rural areas in addition to our urban centers. And we're going to be providing higher dollar awards to exclusively affordable housing projects. And as a whole, we're going to be offering higher dollar totals that one project can earn. So what's great about this program is you can earn up to more money than you would in a traditional CFA application. In fact, up to 90% of the cost could be covered by this program. Now, there are caps based on the certain size of the city or the municipality that you would be applying through. So, for example, in cities over 100,000, like the city of Syracuse, they can apply for one project and they have a funding cap of up to $5 million. And I actually think these are the funding limits from round 5. I think those numbers are going to increase slightly. So as soon as I have those, I can get those out. I will say, while you could apply for up to 90% of the funds, we do require a 10% matching funds from the project owner. The more private investment that you're making into your project, the more competitive that you are going to be. So please, be very cognizant of what is it going to take to make this project viable. Let's say, for example, you're taking an old hotel and you want to revitalize it and turn it into commercial space and apartments. Let's say that it's a $30 million, investment. But to make it feasible, you really just need to get 30% of the projects covered, the cost covered, or 40%. You should apply whatever it's going to take to make this project viable, because if you want to be competitive, you want to have more private investment instead of less private investment. So based on the type of project that you're working on is the allowance that you can earn for the project. So if it's commercial property, we are required by statute to establish the square foot allowances for commercial properties. And again, the commercial space we mentioned before you'll be subject to those caps that you saw on the limits from the slide before. If it's a residential rehab and reconstruction, you can apply for up to $150,000 per property, which is an increase from $100,000 that was used in round 5. If it's residential demolition and deconstruction, you can apply for $30,000 per property. This is an increase from $20,000 that was used in round 5. And if it's residential apartment units that you're creating or rehabilitating, you can earn up to $70,000 per unit. This is up from a $100,000 cap per apartment building. So that's a very significant increase. And if you're creating affordable housing units, an applicant will be eligible for up to $150,000 in addition to the per unit allowance. So again, you can apply for large amounts of money through this program. One key aspect, though, is you as an individual business or a developer would not apply for the funding source. The municipality where the project exists would have to apply. And this is important because the municipality is going to basically decide what are their priorities within their own municipalities on what projects they want to submit for Restore New York funding. So if you have a project that you think that you are interested in that would be a good fit for Restore New York, please make sure you're reaching out to your municipality and working with them to get that application in. DRI round 6 and a new program this year that I am extremely excited about because we've been fighting for this in our region for a couple of years now. So there will be additional $100 million for DRI round 6. This again focusing on recovering the downtowns across New York State. This year, and utilizing a ground-up community-based approach. This has worked really well. We've seen a lot of our cities across the region begin to revitalize their downtowns through this program. Again, Oswego is completely different than what it was 5 years ago, and really an exciting place. I was just up there a week ago and loved being up there. It was a beautiful day right on the lake, and they've got some exciting stuff going on. Fulton was 2 years ago winner. Oneida and the city of Syracuse was last year's winner, and Auburn and Cortland were 2 of our other winners. So we're excited to have round 6. Please, if your municipality isn't already considering applying for an award and you think that there are good opportunities, have them apply, because the downtown is awarded $10 million, and there's some really great opportunities to match up to 40%. The state can provide up to 40% of the project cost for a lot of these projects. which goes a really long way for some projects that need a little more help than the traditional 20% that ESD provides. And then new this year is the $100 million New York Forward Communities Program. So this is going to focus on recovering our rural communities across our region. It's going to be like the DRI, and in which communities will be selected in collaboration with the regional council and DO and Department of State. And what we're probably going to be allowed to do is select 2 or 3 communities to win a portion of a $10 million award. So, you know, if you are a small town or village, you know, let's say if you're the, I'll use Phoenix again as the example, you know, if you're the village of Phoenix, or if you're the village of Mexico, maybe $10 million is a lot of money for you to spend, and finding projects to match that $10 million is tough. But boy, would a $5 million award not really transform some of the work that you're doing in your village downtown. So this program is meant for those communities that $10 million is a little too rich for them. They can't quite get the project needed to meet the 10 million, but if they had a little bit of help and a little infusion of money, they could really make a difference in their community. So that's what this is for. I'm super excited about this. I'm excited at the aspect of having up to 4 different communities awarded funding this year that could really make a difference in the work that they're doing. And so please, you know, if you live in one of these villages, if you live in one of these towns, and you think that there are opportunities, work with your local government on an application, because you know, if you don't apply, then you know, then you can't be awarded. So if we have further questions, please reach out to me again. I'm very excited about this. 1.4 billion Connect All initiative. So what this is going to do, and as we're aware, you know, the ability to access internet is crucial nowadays. It's no longer just something that, you know, you sort of need. You absolutely need it. In a world where we're becoming more and more interconnected via the web, you know, Zoom meetings are taking place instead of, you know, in-person meetings, or you know, the ability to access email, the ability to submit a resume, the ability to work with employers if you're unemployed. Access to the internet is key, and so the governor, in coordination with our federal representative, has made $300 million available on top of the $1.1 billion in federal funds the state earned. This is going to cover grant programs focused on municipal planning, rural deployment, municipal solutions, and innovative technology adoption. The program is creating an advisory board with 16 members. These individuals will help figure out where are the areas across the state that we are still not seeing access to internet, and how do we put a plan in place to get them internet access. Preference is going to go to applicants that can deliver at least a gigabyte of speed to underserved areas and commit to not imposing data caps. And then prevailing wage will be applied. So again, you as an individual business won't be applying for this, but I want to make you aware that there are funding sources out there to help make sure that those who have not had access to internet and to broadband will be getting it in the near future. So be on the lookout for this. I'm excited that we'll be deploying these resources soon. And lastly, $350 million for a new Office of Strategic Workforce Development. Many of you may have been aware of the Workforce Development Initiative that started last year. We were able to fund a lot of great projects, both in partnership with our SUNY schools, with our CUNY schools down in New York City, with our business partners, to create pipelines from education to the workforce, so that there are certification opportunities for individuals that are perhaps not going to go get a 4-year degree. Maybe they're just getting a couple of years degree of education at a community college. There are now opportunities through that program to work directly with our businesses to get them the skills that they need to jump right into the workforce. So this is a continuation of this, and actually taking it a step further, where we're creating a brand new office that's going to be housed within Empire State Development. Through it are multiple grant programs. Again, this is very high level. More details will be coming out on this in the near future, but we're going to have a $115 million pay for performance grant program. There'll be a $50 million sub-allocation for advanced and emerging energy efficiency tech sector and the renewable energy tech sector. $10 million sub-allocation for youth build, $5 million for SUNY and CUNY mental health training initiatives, a $35 million capital grant program for capacity building, and additional funding for administration and other agency programs. So basically, within these multiple programs that I just mentioned are going to be opportunities to train some of your existing employees for advancement, so some money to get them the skills that they need to go from an entry-level position, maybe into middle management or lower management. There'll also be some opportunities for our youth to get into some of our trade programs across the the state. As we know, here in Syracuse, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for construction jobs as the I-81 project is starting to move forward. So over the next 3 to 4 years, many opportunities for youth or unemployed or underemployed individuals to get training and move into the jobs that are going to be existing. So, and also some capacity building. If you need to build out certain capacity to allow for those trainings, there'll be funding allowed for that as well. Or if you're not for profit that's looking to do some of that training, there'll be funding for that. So a lot of opportunities through the Office of Workforce Development. Again, more specific details will be coming out on that. But be on the lookout because there's great opportunities for you to find the workforce that you need. We're well aware that many people are having issues and struggling with their hiring. We're, as a regional council, going to be working on a workforce strategy this year, and then working with our state partners across the state to implement that strategy and find ways to target those who either need additional skills or just need help finding the jobs that are currently open. So that'll all be coming out this summer and into the fall, and we're excited to try to help get the workforce moving again and get more people talented into your businesses.